So what we're going to talk about today is the solution that we worked with Socrata to build for the Utah Department of Transportation. We're going to talk a little bit about what got them into the place where they were, kind of where we are now, and what the solution is going to look like as we deploy it into the future. So let's first, to level set everybody's expectations and experience, talk a little bit about what does the Department of Transportation do. They build and maintain very large, very expensive assets. Roads, bridges, rails, ports, and they are, when you take them in aggregate, trillions upon trillions of dollars in assets. And that's where they spend the bulk of their money. Now, in addition to building and maintaining those assets, they also have a responsibility to ensure that the usage of those assets are both safe and efficient. And so you'll find that their strategy was also about, they call it zero fatalities, but it's about making the roads as safe as they possibly can be. And then about how can they help you get from point A to point B as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So not just, it's about safety. It's not just for people, it's about moving goods as well. So trucks and trains and boats and airplanes, everything. Okay? So with that in mind, we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening to infrastructure now in transportation. So across the country, departments of transportation are getting more and more, I'm going to call it, integrated with the Internet of Things. So in Utah and other DOTs, they've deployed road sensors that don't just say, hey, a car or a truck has passed over. It's able to say it was going this fast. It was going in this direction. It weighed this much. And so the amount of additional data they're collecting every day is increasing geometrically. So in their example, about 30 million rows of data a day. Then with additional priorities that they're going to see around transparency for where they're spending all of this money and where they're expecting significantly more money to come in the future, they needed a solution that allowed them to really get their arms around what's happening. So let's talk a little bit about where UDoT was before this project started. You know, their program directors, engineers, construction teams would get these static PDFs every week. They would look through their schedule and their scope and their budget and figure out, are we on, are we not? Here's an anomaly, what does that mean? They didn't have a whole lot of ability to drill down into the data. They didn't have a whole lot of ability to ask questions. And when you needed to ask a question, you either had to go to the guy or you had to open a ticket with IT to run a different report, and you might get that within a week or two. It was very, very difficult. An additional challenge that Utah has, that many states have, if you've been working in this industry for a while, that IT, they've all tried to consolidate. And so a lot of the IT function is now consolidated in a central supporting function that's supposed to be supporting all the agencies and departments in the state, and yet all of the functional users still tend to reside in the agencies. So the folks that know what the data means and how to use it reside in the agency, but the data custodians are in this centralized entity that don't really quite understand exactly why we need this particular data. So that was their current state. So what they asked for first was, how do they empower their users so that they can get access to the data and they can do all of the searches, all the queries, everything that they need to do on their own. The analogy we use is that my mom could figure it out. An interface that my mom could figure out. It's not, oh, I need to know a little bit of SQL and to be able to write a little bit of code and I can get all the data out I need. It's point and click and drag and drop. And then they want to, they really needed to replicate some existing reports that folks have been using for 20 or 30 years, but behind those existing reports have the capability to drill into the information and answer questions. So it was very, very important when we started saying, okay, here's how you review your schedule, and this is how you review your budget, and this is how you review your scope, that what we built in Socrata looks exactly like what they were getting out of Cognos in their little PDF, but with the advantage that it was interactive. And we could actually click and point and start to get into the specifics behind all of the data. So that's what they wanted. That's kind of where they were. And so what they did was they released an RFP in December of last year. The process was pretty interesting. They gave us a whole series of data sets and asked us to come in and say, what can you do? And we did a 4-hour demonstration of our solution in the March timeframe. And we were awarded and started the work on the 1st of May of 2016. We went live, and Mike's going to talk a little bit about it. We went live with 16 different systems integrated with our solution on November 1st. The first iteration, we used an agile development approach, and the first iteration of our reports, which were those reports I was talking about around schedule, scope, and budget, in 6 weeks. They got that first iteration in 6 weeks, and then continued to grow on that in additional 6-week sprints until everything was live in the solution, like I said, on November 1. So what does it look like? And why? Why did we win? Why did they pick us? Socrata already had a pretty long-standing presence in Utah already. And quite frankly, when this RFP originally dropped, we weren't all that sure we should bid it. There wasn't a whole lot of additional information that we had, but UDoT had actually reached out to Socrata and said, we want you to bid this. And Socrata reached out to us and said, well, we're not as strong in transportation as you at Grant Thornton are, and so why don't we build this solution together and take it to Utah? And so that's what we did. The value proposition for these guys was an existing, mature platform upon which there was already a significant amount of data that was built. With Grant Thornton's transportation expertise, allowed us to come in and not just say, okay, we're going to take these individual data sets and we're going to give you reports based on them. We're going to take what were traditionally siloed data sets and start allowing you, kind of Utah Department of Transportation, to start telling a story. So, for example, we've spent $26 million adding this roadway, resurfacing it, and refurbishing this bridge. Okay, that's great. People want to know where their money's going and why. But there's an additional part of the story. How has that reduced the number of fatal accidents? How has that reduced my commute time? Traditionally, safety data was in its own silo all by itself and not tied specifically to assets or to capital projects. Same thing for traffic management and traffic operation systems. Those things all tended to sit by themselves. Nobody had taken the time to say, we need to tell a combined story. And part of our message to UDoT, they had asked us, they said, so what does this solution look like 3 years from now? And I said, 3 years from now, the solution goes from starting with individual silos to telling that combined story to then integrating external sources. So you've spent a ton of money upgrading the roads in this one part of the city, and you put in new lights, new on-ramps and off-ramps. What's the economic development benefit that the city's realized? How would you measure that? New construction permits in a specific geography. We're starting to say, hey, is there a reduction in violent crime? So not even talking about accident statistics, getting public safety data and saying, this is the additional benefit that this investment in your infrastructure has borne. and being able to, again, tie that back to these original investments, that was a pretty compelling story. And it started with the quality of the platform, kind of the experience that we have with a solution, and then the ability to very quickly ingress data and then tie that data together to tell a story. Okay? So with that said, I'm gonna talk a little bit about, I'm gonna actually transition to Mike, forgive me, and Mike's gonna talk specifically about the elements of the solution, okay?
Thanks, Tony. Thank you. So I think Tony did a really good job of describing the solution and why Grant Thornton and Socrata together and the value here. But I think there's one point that I want to add to that. There's a lot of value in us and Socrata going together to market to deliver you guys a solution, because we're able to fill in and do some of the things that Socrata as a platform doesn't do up by itself, but are able to add in support for doing your extract, transformation, and load, so getting data from multiple sources, combining it together, cleaning it, and putting it into the system so that that burden doesn't fall on you guys as Socrata customers. We're able to handle a lot of that for you to get the data involved in the system, as well as, once the data is in there, pulling it out and doing some analytic work with that information using other tools, whether it's using R or Tableau or some of the other things. We're able to provide support there, as well as the project management around the whole thing. What that does is it gives you a fully across-the-board integrated solution for business intelligence internally and performance management that you don't necessarily get if you're just a Socrata customer buying software and trying to manage this yourself. So a ton of benefit and a ton of value that UDoT has seen in that. It's helped them to move a lot faster, working with Grant Thornton and Socrata together, as opposed to just trying to do a Socrata implementation on their own and doing and handling a lot of those pieces themselves. So it's been really successful for them in Utah, and a lot of fun helping them to get to the state where they're at now. So talking about some of the key achievements that we've had here. So first things first, Tony mentioned more than 16 different data sources that we've combined into their solution already. This includes not only data from legacy source systems that hadn't made it into their existing data warehouses or projects, but we also leverage those assets. So if you have a large data warehousing effort going on already within your agency, that's great. This project fits alongside that. We'll leverage what you've already built. We'll leverage the governance programs and the things that you have going on and enhance that and allow you to drive value out of that faster than you maybe would have without Socrata. Looking at the list here, you can see a wide range of things, everything from financial and operational data to some things that are coming at us every night to things that happen on a yearly basis. Collecting all this type of data and pulling it into the system. Looking ahead to the future, we plan on grabbing some of that real-time types of feeds and information that they're going to be seeing. As a data guy, can't wait to get my hands on the sensor data and start playing around with the things coming from connected and autonomous vehicles. We think we're going to be able to build some really great stuff within the platform and do some analytics on it using R and other tools as well. So, a couple of key achievements. Tony talked about the first couple of weeks that we were there, first few months. Right off the bat, it was really about taking, for a proof of concept perspective, some of their existing reports and empowering them and changing them by implementing them within Socrata and adding the functionality that they were so desperately missing. First, that meant not only giving them the ability to drill down and ask questions of the data. So I've got a report on project management. Some of the natural things that fall out of that are how many projects are being managed by an individual project manager, which ones are late, which ones are running behind. I want to filter over a certain period of time. Using the data lens feature of Socrata, we were able to empower users to do that. Exciting part about that is now folks are doing that on their own. Folks that are in the region that are managing projects are creating these data lenses on their own for their own individual groups or for their own individual purposes because they've been taught and trained in the tool and have built more than even Grant Thornton and Socrata could together combined. It's been a really exciting thing watching folks grow from seeing the tool at first, not really understanding exactly what they bought, to now, oh wow, we're changing around how we're doing our jobs on a daily basis using the software and the solution that we've built together. Again, first iteration of that was using a static set of data and was implemented within the first month that we were on the job. By the end of month 2, we had automated that so that it was updating automatically on a nightly basis, and they were able then to start integrating the report. We've built some other functionality between now and then, which we'll talk about, but what's been interesting now is now that they've been using this for about 6 months, we're seeing them ask for new things in this RPD report that we're helping them to create that they honestly have always wanted but never would have asked for because of the difficulties and challenges of getting changes implemented in the old solution. So we're seeing them ask for updates, and they're essentially transforming this report into what they have always wanted it to look like. And it's really exciting for them as we're empowering them, getting ready for a big meeting here coming up at the end of March, where we're going to be reviewing RPDU version 2 for them to use. All right? So once that was finished.
One additional comment before we move off of this page. Another unique element of this solution was that the initial iteration was purely for internal management and internal performance management, financial reporting, financial analysis. They very quickly said there's a lot of very good information from a transparency perspective we can be publishing on how well we're doing against our strategic objectives for zero fatalities and caring of infrastructure and mobility. And what we've done as an additional, there is an additional element, we're going to, I think, share the link here in a few minutes, that you can go to now UDOT's website and see how well they're performing against their metrics. And so building simultaneously an internal and an external system was somewhat unique and presented its own group of challenges.
Thanks, Tony. It's a good segue into this next slide. So talking here, as Tony mentioned, every state department, every agency creates some type of an annual report or that measures performance and talks about strategic objectives going forward through the year. This is transportation or anything else. You know, most of you guys probably publish it in some type of a PDF document that goes online and you guys stick it on your website and that's it. It's a static piece of content that remains there for the year. UDOT was doing exactly the same thing with their strategic direction report. It was a lengthy document that focused again on their 3 strategic objectives that Tony mentioned. It took them about 8 months every year to create this document between gathering data from different sources, validating it, making sure it was correct, getting the charts right, building them in whatever tool they were using, and then adding content around that. Lengthy process for sure, and something that when it was published never really delivered the bang for the buck that they were hoping for because the data was old from day one. You know, from the moment it was published, they're publishing data that's a few months old. So using Socrata's Perspectives module, we have transformed what they're doing by turning that into a live online web document that you can get to through that link today. Their current version of this document was written and built by their communications director. So their communications director, who's not a technical person, was able to use Perspectives to build a web page, build the content that she wanted to have in here, and grab data to create the charts that support everything that's going on. The document now has performance metrics for each of the 3 strategic objectives that we helped UDOT to define and create, and graphs and charts that support each one of them that are updated live on a daily basis. So if you're looking at trying to measure, for example, on their zero fatalities objective, you're looking at the performance metrics around safety, which are how many crashes occur on state roads, how many injuries are there, and how many fatalities. In the past, we'd have a yearly measure that you published once. Now, every single day, that updates with the most current and up-to-date data. In addition, as those metrics and numbers change throughout the year, or as the state looks to push a new initiative or is trying to do something, their communications folks have the ability to go into the document, edit the text, and annotate it to let folks know what's going on. So this is a front and center document. If you go right to UDOT's homepage, if you don't feel like copying the link, you'll see it right there in the middle called Strategic Direction, and it is live in Socrata. So it's been a great experience building that for them. As you go there, you're going to see a limited set of everything that we built supporting this. They've chosen to publish certain elements of their strategic document this year, but have much more that's going on internally, that's internally facing, supporting things. So I'll give you one example, which if you come over to Demo Alley, we can take a look at. They've got a large data set around crash data. Okay, so they have a history of every crash that has occurred in the state going back to 2011, and they've collected for each one of those crashes about 80 different characteristics of what happened. Was the road wet? Was the driver drunk? Was it a kid? Was it an elderly person? How fast were they going? Where? And all these different things. And so they're using that information now to try to drive and understand what is actually causing crashes on the roads in Utah. In the past, they would always guess. We think it's drunk driving. We think it's seatbelts. Well, we're going to actually use analytics to tell them, here are the causal factors. Here are the things that you should be focusing on. And as you move into 2018, here's where you should be focusing money on programs if you actually want to try to achieve your zero fatalities goal. So we're really excited about doing that for them over the coming months as we move forward. All right. So next thing, this has been done here over the last month or so. We've, for the first time in Socrata, started integrating graphics using the advanced visualization module called D3. D3 is an open JavaScript library, which you can find on the internet, that integrates directly into the HTML embeds feature in Perspectives and allows you to build fancy graphics like the ones that you see here that you can't build in Socrata natively. This is really fantastic stuff. D3 is used by many of the major web content publishing sites out there that you see. Many of you read the New York Times and you see some of the interactive infographics and things that they've built. New York Times is a huge proponent of D3 and the other libraries. So what you're looking at here is an interactive graphic that allows you to zoom in, zoom out, turn on different values and axes and things that are going on. And if you notice, it's a line and bar chart, which is something not supported in Socrata today. What we did here, on top of the fancy visualization, is we were able to use predictive analytics with R to make predictions about their snow and ice removal budget on an ongoing basis throughout the year. This is critically important to a Department of Transportation, as snow and ice removal costs are very variable depending on the year and how much snowfall is going on. In state government, budgets are use it or lose it. So if you're tracking low and it looks like you're going to have a light snow year, you want to start thinking about what projects we're going to use that money for so that we can get the biggest bang for our buck. Alternatively, if you're having a heavy snow year, you got to figure out where you're going to get money from or how you're going to pitch to the legislature or other folks to get more money to help support you. In our picture, which I can demo for you in full out in Demo Alley, we changed around their prediction and showed them that while they were predicting that they were going to have a surplus for the year, we've identified, well, actually the numbers show that you're going to have a shortfall. They use this year as a part of their legislative session to ask for additional funds, which they're hopefully going to be using to remove snow throughout the rest of the winter. So this is a really great thing and something that we're looking to try to do more for them in other applications as we move forward on our project. So future development, where is this going? First, you guys have seen several new product features that Socrata is looking to highlight in their tool as they're moving forward. They have a lot of new things that are coming out this week. We're excited to start taking advantage of those. There's a ton of really fun things on the visualization side in terms of data integration that are going to make this easier for all of you that are customers to do this moving forward. Second, we want to continue with the predictive pieces of this, build more models that are going to enhance the efficiency and the ability for folks to manage government and to achieve their strategic objectives. Last, we want to start integrating this data, as we mentioned, from big data sources, connected and autonomous vehicles, et cetera, and ultimately empower users to utilize data to make decisions more effectively and efficiently. So again, we want to show this stuff to you in detail. Please come over to Demo Alley. I know several of you, I recognize your faces. Been there over the last day and a half or so. Come check it out. Would love to give you specific demonstrations of any individual components and answer any of the questions that you have.
So I think we have just a few minutes left before the end of this session. Before we close, does anybody have any specific questions?
I have a mic if you just wait 1 second, thanks. If you could say where you're from too before you ask your question. Yes, my name is Andy. I'm from Marin County, California. Mm-hmm. I have a question about what factors you use to do your predictive analytics using R.
Yep.
Because you said that the snow budget is going to be higher than
Yes.
the DOT had predicted. So what indicators do you use for that?
Yep. So the model that they were using before was simply a 3-year rolling average of the past 3 winters, and it stayed static throughout the year. So not very predictive, as there's tons of variation in snowfall in Utah. For our first cut at the model, we simply took data from the current year as well as their existing predictions and used that to draw a line using an ARIMA model, so an autoregressive integrated moving average model in R. Took it, pulled it out using the R Socrata connector, ran our code in R, threw the data back in, and then we're plotting it in our D3 graph. Okay. In the future, as we develop and move this further, we have some weather source data that we want to line up. So we'll take predictions for the next couple of weeks and or month, feed that into our model to try to gain even more insight. So if there's a big storm forecast or if things are going on, we'd like to add that in there as well.
Thank you. Wade Holland from Montgomery County, Maryland. My question, you talked about the ETL process.
Yes.
Do you have any sort of automated cleaning or data validation that you're doing?
Yeah, so absolutely. Huge part of the project was
Yes.
handling the ETL components. In fact, it's one of the biggest challenges that I'm sure all of you have as you're looking to try to do open data or you're trying to create data that's accurate within these types of systems. We handle that for them. Our process involves writing all the queries to extract the information, writing the cleaning processes, and integrating it with, we're actually using UDoT's tool for extraction. So we're using their Oracle ODI, as well as our R deployment to do some of the cleanup around, we want to transform names from the ugly database version to something that's human readable. We're handling that ourselves as a part of our process. So that's some of the benefit you get if you're purchasing a combined solution. That work doesn't fall on you guys, it falls on us.
Yeah, that was the heaviest lift from this, getting 16 integrations built with clean data and data that can be reliable. And I'm sure you can imagine through each sprint, we were doing our data quality analysis and we're finding anomalies as we're integrating them with the reports and seeing numbers that seemed a little bit strange. For one example, we talk about fatalities. They track internal and external fatalities. They were tracking about 50 internal fatalities a year.
Against 1,000 employees.
Yeah, against 1,000 total employees. And so, that came out immediately.
2% of the workforce I immediately asked off the project.
So getting the data right and getting those integrations built was the heaviest lift, but was also really a differentiator. When we were working with kind of the central IT folks, there was a fair amount of skepticism at the start of the project whether we could do this much data integration this quickly. And they've been very, very surprised that we actually had been able to.
An important point here around that, the cleanup process. A lot of folks think about, oh man, we've got to do all this data governance and we've got to clean everything and get everything exactly right before we can even start. It's led to a lot of paralysis by analysis with a lot of agencies out there. Everybody here, I'm sure, has had or been involved in some type of a data warehouse project that's gone on forever with governance and cleansing. And it feels like those projects run and you never really get to the business value that you've always been trying to drive out of them. The approach that we're taking here is different. Let's create the charts, let's create the graphs, let's create the business value first. And if there are anomalies in the data, we're going to use that charting and graphing process to identify them, go back to the individual users who are getting the reports, get them to change that information so that they're getting value right away. Yeah, there were some problems, certainly. But once you get into a cycle of, oh, I see that I'm getting value, I now want to work with you to clean that data, fix my process that's creating it, you all of a sudden change, it's a game shift in terms of how you're getting to an end result. It's not, let's wait 3 years, it turns into 5 or 7 and over budget and overrun things before we can even start.
Yeah, to summarize, that's also a key point where Utah was very much in sync with us. We were going to be not only iterative with the deployment of the solution, but iterative working alongside them to build and enforce governance. So it wasn't, we're going to build governance first, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do for the solution. We're going to integrate governance and be iterative with how our governance is going to work at the same time we were deploying the solution. So the time to value was just a whole lot faster. And our red light is on. We are officially out of time. We will be at Demo Alley for the rest of the afternoon if there's any specific questions, and I'm sure there's a few technical data geeks in there that want to actually sit down and go over some of this stuff. More than happy to go through it. Okay?
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.